Welcome to the show. This is Elevenses with Lisa, and I'm Lisa Louise Cooke, and it's 11 o'clock in Texas, in Central, but wherever you are, Elevenses is your time to get together with your friends and get a little, I've got hot cider. It's so blustery and cold outside. It looked like a tornado was coming in. So anyway, this is my first fall outfit for Texas, which a couple days ago it was 90 degrees, so we're just adjusting. But I'm so happy that you're here. And in fact, I know lots of you are here because here at the live show, we all get together and talk in the chat. And it's been fun. Actually, I get to read some of these as I'm getting ready to go live with the show. And hearing your stories, hearing whether you have family Bibles in your family. Many people had sad faces, but we're going to fix some of the sad faces, I hope, because I've got some ideas for you on where you can find them and how you can interpret them. I was really, hi, Mary Duke and Marge the Car. And Sandra got the Lens, Google Lens, if you got one of our last episodes. I'm so glad you guys are all here. Well, let me tell you, as I was putting this episode together this week, and, it was one of those things, it just came to me as an idea. This was not on the front burner. But as I got into it, I was thinking, how am I going to fill an hour on the Family Bible? I'm not sure how to do that. And yet the more I dug, just like with anything in genealogy, oh my gosh, I was flabbergasted. How much there is to consider, how many opportunities we have to locate them, and how many amazing stories are out there. Really, the Bible is the oldest genealogical document that there is. Genealogy runs prevalent throughout the text of the Bible, and since people got their first printed Bibles, they started recording their family in them. And as we know, even back in the 1940s when people were applying for Social Security cards, the Family Bible was a trusted document to state what your age was. So, families have been recording their families for years. It's really been the one record that they carried with them and passed down. But that's kind of faded over the last probably 50 to 100 years in terms of popularity. And in fact, back in 1907, in the newspaper, a librarian lamented the fact that the Family Bible just wasn't being used for that purpose anymore. The Family Bible, with its genealogical record, served a useful purpose in its day, said the librarian. And I don't see that with all our boasted advance in civilization. We have developed anything quite to take its place. Of course, nowadays, cities and towns pride themselves on the accuracy of their vital statistics, and we have whole libraries of genealogical works. Dry enough, most of them are too. But the individual family record, such as was kept a few generations ago, is very decidedly missing, and it's a pity that such is the case. For one thing, the list of births, marriages, and deaths that were kept in the ponderous volume of Holy Writ operated to keep our members of the family close to one another. It was, in a way, a central point, valuable for sentimental reasons as well as for reasons more distinctly utilitarian. As scribe succeeded scribe, the family continuity was emphasized and the entries were significant of the growth of a clannish feeling, which is too little in evidence at the present time. There are not, I venture to say, very many people in this year of grace who know anything or care anything about their relatives further removed than the degree of first cousinship, and even first cousins are frequently out of mind. Of course, our tendencies are responsible largely for this state of affairs, but I often wish that we had reminders of our kin, such as were furnished by the Family Bible of past days with their direct personal testimony, accounting to messages from parents to children. Whenever I see one of these pages filled with careful entries made in joy and in sorrow, in the confidence of pride of life, or by the trembling fingers of old age, it seems to me that we've lost something in our hurried existence that is to be regretted. We can go to the city or town clerk or perhaps to the public library for information as to our ancestry or our relatives. But this is a rather cold and formal method of procedure. Certainly, we do not find in official records and in books the handwriting of our forebears. So, since the Family Bible is one of the first genealogical documents that families create, and it's one that you should turn to first in your own family, as you're interviewing your oldest relatives, you want to take a look and see what you might have around the house. And really, let's talk about some of these places where you can find family Bibles. Your home is probably one of the best places to look, and you actually might be surprised, as I was, that there were more family Bibles around my house than I realized. So putting this episode together got me thinking about where I might have family Bibles around the house, and I realized I do, here in the bookcase. So when we first moved in about 7 years ago, I ended up kind of grouping books together, and I realized I had put all of the family Bibles that we had gotten from Bill's mom and my mom and dad and my grandfather. This is Bill's parents. So this was Bill's mom's Bible. And what's interesting is not every Bible is necessarily going to have the family history recorded in it. But if you leaf through the pages, and I really did leaf through it page by page, I ended up finding some goodies in here. And I don't think I'd even noticed these before when I got the book and ended up moving to Texas shortly after, so I really didn't get a chance to go through it. So she's got notations in here, she's got things that were going on in her life, and you can see even little markings for the scriptures that meant the most to her. So you really get a sense of each person in your family and what is meaningful to them. I also have my grandfather's and my grandmother's and several Bibles in here. And then I realized I walk past a family Bible every single day to my office. Come on. So my office is just down here that I talk to you from every Thursday. But I walk past this Bible every single day. And this is one, I think probably from the 70s. There's very little written in it in terms of family. But you might run into a Bible as recent as that. And if you find a lot of dates from a long time ago, it's very possible somebody much later down the road did the writing or transcribing, but this belonged to my grandmother, Pauline. We'll be talking more about her in a moment in this episode. And here in my office, this is actually what I'm looking at when I'm talking to you on the show. It's got all my genealogy books and all that. But I realized again, while putting this episode together this week, I had one more Bible, and it's this one here. It's got kind of a satin covering on it. It belonged to my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. And this one was given to her when she joined a ladies' auxiliary. All the wives of train conductors were part of an organization. And this would have been their book. So again, not technically a family Bible, but actually, when I went back through it, and it's been a long time since I looked at this, there's typed notes, there's handwritten notes. There's this little booklet with the name and phone number of every single one of the ladies, all of her friends. This, my friends, actually has turned out to be a key to a photograph that I have with all those ladies in it. And of course, even letters. So take the time to look through the Bibles in your home. You might be surprised what you find. It's so interesting that we get focused on the family Bible. But in reality, even if the records of the family haven't been recorded in the Bible, a person's personal Bible is often the place where they're going to tuck in the most precious things they have. And certainly I found that as I went through all these Bibles I had discovered in my own home. So when you're looking for family Bibles that are offline, you're going to reach out to your closest family and distant cousins, particularly those in the female lines. And I did just that. And some of the Bibles on the pages that you saw in the opening video come from my cousin Carolyn, who's here in chat today. And I'm going to be talking more about her and our family Bible in a moment. You can also look in archives. They oftentimes will have original family Bibles, historical societies, and yes, even garage sales. I've picked this one up for $10 at a garage sale. Now, this is not my family, but it's fascinating. And the artwork, the original artwork that the person did in the Bible, and I'm doing my research to determine she didn't actually have descendants. So I'm working on seeing if I can't find other branches of that family that I can get that Bible back to. And I even have Bibles sent to me. Now, this may not happen to you as much, but I do get people send me items. One woman reached out to me and said that her very best friend had passed away in a nursing home, and she didn't have any family at all that she was aware of at all. And amongst this big box of stuff that I got was this, probably the smallest Bible in my house right now. This one here. And inside, the inscription reads that it's for John Huffman, who was born January 2nd of 1869. It's absolutely precious, and the ink that was used. So I'm working on also researching this family, and of course it came with the little, the photograph, which is just amazing. So you never know. You never know in your travels, in your activities, what might come your way or where you may be able to find precious items like this. And finding them offline. We talked about reaching out first and foremost to the people in your family, cousins. I reached out to my cousin Carolyn, who is in chat. She's here almost every week. Hi, Carolyn. And she's also here in Texas, down in Southern Texas. And I reached out to her just a couple days ago and I said, do you have the Herring Family Bible? Now, Carolyn's mother is the sister of my grandmother. So the couple that you see there are Lenora and John Herring, and this is her mother's parents and my grandmother's parents. And she said, no, she didn't have the Herring Family Bible. And we have a cousin, Jeanette, in Oklahoma, and she has the one that was in the Herring's home. Well, she told me a really strange story, and she gave me permission to share it with you today, which I think is so interesting. She says, many years ago, probably when I was in my 20s or my 30s, I was visiting at the Herring home in Oklahoma, our great-grandparents. And Lenora had already passed, my great-grandmother, her grandmother, but Jewel, her daughter, still lived in the house. And Carol and I had to go dig up this old newspaper article that I have of Jewel working outside the house. She says, I was asking her some questions about the family history. She got out the family Bible and said it contained the only information that she knew. It was a large Bible. She says, I don't remember much about the condition, and getting the pictures of things certainly wasn't the trend back then. We didn't know how a cell phone, did we? But she opened it up to the pages where the family history was written, and she proceeded to tear out the pages and give them to me. Can you imagine the look on her face when this happens? So she says, looking back on that, I kind of wish I had stopped her. So she kept the Bible and she gave me these pages. The Bible itself didn't seem to impress me much, but I was very impressed by what was written on those pages. And the beautiful thing about doing this episode today was Carol and we got this conversation going, and she sent me the digital copies of the pages, which are wonderful. So she says, after Jewel could no longer live in the Herring house, and my mother placed Jewel in a nursing home, my mother disposed of all the things in the house, and the house was sold to pay for Jewel's care. I was not there in Oklahoma when this occurred, but I guess Jeanette must have been and had picked up the family Bible. Eventually, Jeanette and I got our heads together and realized who had what. I've attached pages of the family history pages. Some of it's hard to read. I think most of it was written in pencil. And for some reason, I didn't make sense of some of the information till recent years. And I can so identify with what Carolyn's saying, because I still have the little note paper that my grandmother wrote when I was 8 years old. We were talking about family history and she was scribbling things down. I'm still deciphering some of that. So going back to some of these things and looking at them with a fresh eye is a nice idea if you do happen to have a family Bible with records in it, because you may see things that you didn't register the first time. And that was certainly her case. And this page is a great example of We see some consistency in the handwriting, but we also see it looks like somebody goes in afterward with pencil and starts filling in places. So just the layout, the handwriting, the ink, the pencil, all of this tells us something about the history of the Bible. Carolyn went on to tell me that she says, I think there were multiple people that wrote on the pages. I agree, Carolyn, in looking at those, including my mother, she said. That was a herring jump. Oh, there was a herring jump. So jump was the family that the herrings married into. There was a family reunion several years ago at the home of one of the Jump cousins. I went, and so did Jeanette. She brought the family Bible to show. It was in very, very poor condition. And if I remember right, it was stored in an old cardboard box. And Carolyn dug through her files for me, and she found the photograph that she took at the reunion. Look at that Bible. It's been loved, it's been used, and now it's scattered in a couple of different places. So really interesting how these stories evolve over time and the travels and journeys that a family Bible can go on. So after you make the rounds, and I do encourage you, reach out to people, even people you may have spoken to before in your family. You might be surprised what surfaces. And also look at some of those archives and historical societies where your family lived. But if that doesn't pan out or you can't get to physical locations right away, there's always offline. And this was one of these areas of research for this episode. I was really amazed at how many options we have to find old family Bibles online. And as you think of, you're probably initially thinking about your own family, your parents, your grandparents, but as you look back through your family tree and those branches start spreading, take a look at some of those. Sometimes it's really the older families, which is wonderful, that are online because somebody many years ago decided, wow, this is a very old Bible, that we need to hang on to this and get it digitized. And lots of people have been making the effort to digitize old Bibles. So you might actually have more success with a much older family line than more currently. So let's talk about where you can look online. Okay, first and foremost, the Library of Congress. So when you go to the Library of Congress and do a simple search for Family Bible, I recommend put the quotation marks around that. Okay, so that gives us an exact phrase. And at the Library of Congress, their search engine does support that. In fact, we talk about that as being such a powerful search operator for Google, but really, quotation marks is probably one of the most common operators that you can use in many different search engines on many different websites. Typically, each website will have a page that tells you kind of what they support, but this worked great at the Library of Congress. Lots and lots of results, and if we look over on the left, we can see that they're actually in different categories. So we might have photos, there might be a film about an old family Bible. I found audio recordings. It was amazing. And certainly the old Bibles themselves, some of which were digitized. So another place that you can look, and I'm going to have all of these listed out for you with all the addresses, the URLs in the show notes for you for this episode. The Internet Archive. Okay, so the Internet Archive is a site that is attempting to basically save copies of everything that's happening on the web. Can you imagine the amount of storage space you'd need to do that? Well, that's their goal. And they're over at archive.org, and it's free. So I went there. Now, I go there and I look for a lot of other things, but I hadn't thought about a family Bible before. I did a family Bible in quotes, and sure enough, there were 753 entries. And you can see that many of these are the actual Bible that's been digitized. Some of them are transcriptions. So this first one that we're looking at here, Streepy Family Bible. So if you see one that's interesting, and you could go in there and play with putting your family's surnames alongside Family Bible in quotes, put the surname outside of it, and just see what happens. But I think, there's not that many here relatively speaking. So if you browse through them, you might spot something really interesting. This Streepy Family Bible, if you click on it, you can go page by page and look through the Bible. This one, they digitized just the pages that had the family history information. And they did it in color, which is gorgeous. Handwriting Variations. So you can see here again, when we see a blue ink pen, we have kind of a time frame we're thinking about, right? Maybe more towards the 20th century. If you're seeing pencil was actually very common back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. Calligraphy ink pens, much earlier. So this one has so many variations, and it's really interesting. I liked this example because they were writing these notes in the margins. A lot of this 3:50 p.m. So I'm sure to this family, there's going to be a lot to decipher. So you can see that sometimes this was the go-to document just to make general notations. Who knows what this was all about, but I love this example. Let me show you what this looks like. You can actually kind of flip the pages. So when you use the left-right arrows, you can flip through. Now, this one is the genealogical records taken from the Family Bible of James Monroe Palmer. And he was born in 1822. I told you, lots of older Bibles. And his wife was born in 1830. He died in 1899. And this book, digitized, is all transcriptions. So somebody went in and typed all this up. And these are the records from the Bible that have all been nice and neatly organized. But that reminds us that as wonderful as it would be to find something like this, we want to, again, take it with a grain of salt and think about the fact that every time you transcribe and rewrite, you're potentially introducing errors. So we want to not stop here, but this is a springboard to be able to go and then do our research, get the birth and death certificates, other types of records, the census. We're going to try and verify everything that we're finding. That's the case with a handwritten Bible, don't get me wrong, as well. But when we see that somebody is going through and rewriting something, whether it's typed or whether it's in handwriting, then we know that there's a possibility of just plain old transcription errors. So I love the flip through, don't you? It's like looking at old books right there on the website. eBay. Okay, so I saw somebody talking about eBay in chat, and absolutely, that's the place to go. You'd be amazed how many family Bibles there are. In fact, there were so many, I thought, well, I'll show you an example of a search when I'm searching just for a single surname. And again, it looks to me like you can use quotation marks when you're trying to make exact phrases. When I did Family Bible without them, I got lots of different variations where that was not considered a phrase in context. It was actually this family had owned these Bibles or whatever. It could be separate. So putting Family Bible in quotation marks gives us that phrase. And of course, if somebody is trying to sell a family Bible on this auction website, they're going to have that phrase on there. And sure enough, if you happen to have the Farber family in your family tree, then there's a Bible right now. It's a little pricey, but that'd be worth it if it was your family. And some of these are beautiful. Now, a lot of these people are just collectors. They pick them up at tag sales. They're not their family, so they just go and put them on eBay. So again, the volume of original physical Bibles is huge on eBay. And it's ongoing. So if you do a search and you don't find something that really fits into your family tree, make sure you're signed in to a free account on eBay. And then you see just under, what's actually just above the title, so you see the $100, and above that the title. Well, right above that is Save This Search. Click that heart, and this works kind of like Google Alerts does. It's going to take the search that you did, Farber Family Bible. It's going to run it 24 hours a day. And eventually, if it finds an auction that matches, it's going to email you and send that auction link to you. So it does the research for you now and into the future. So run it one time and then set it up, and it will do the work for you. Google, we can't not go to Google, and because really Google is going to be able to find things all over the internet, particularly if you have a cousin you've never met and they have their own family history blog, or there's a county website that's putting genealogy information. Google's going to be able to find all of these little, onesie-twosie types of websites that are out there. So search for the surname along with Family Bible in quotation marks. In fact, I put Cooke in quotation marks just to see what happens here. Well, I popped up. That's not a surprise, right? It did a pretty good job of finding this video. But also, what really interested me about this was not only were there many different sites. Some of these people had digitized their albums, or they had transcribed them, typed them up on the websites. But Cooke and Osborne, Bill's grandfather's name is Cooke, and he married an Osborne. So that one's on my list to go look at when I have time. Okay, Familysearch. Familysearch.org is an absolutely free genealogy website. You do need a free account to get in there and get going with it, so make sure that you do that. I ran a search, found an example, the Haynes Family Bible, 1815 to 1905 at Familysearch. And it lists the subject. So you see they've done a great job of at least listing all of the surnames that are potentially found in these digitized records. Here's an example. When you click through, you can see the right and left arrows. We can again kind of swipe and browse through the book itself. And their book catalog is massive. So could definitely look there because you're going to be finding all kinds of things like this. And in fact, when you get through to the results and you get on the catalog page for this book, take a look. I noticed this. I missed it the first time I looked at it, and it wasn't until I put this image here on the screen that I noticed it. It says, notes, to view a digital version of this item, click here. So that's where you would click and then be able to go and see those digitized pages and be able to scroll through them. So really, really nice. And it'll tell you where the original is, if the original is still intact, the names, the years, all that good stuff. And of course, I don't know if you know, but the Familysearch book collection is partnered together with WorldCat. And WorldCat is like the world's library card catalog. And it's a free site, worldcat.org. And so a lot of, these books you'll also probably have come up when you run searches at WorldCat. WorldCat also links over to other websites as well. And the Allen County Public Library is a great example of that. In fact, you can go directly to their site and they have a whole page just devoted to family Bibles. So it isn't a huge collection, but it would only take you a couple of seconds to go through and alphabetically look through and see the names they have. They also have a search engine so that you can search the family Bible records as well. They're in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I know I follow them on Instagram, and they have librarians who are available to help you via email and all that. So use their website and then contact them, and they're absolutely happy to help. Archive Grid is another great place to go. Now, if you were looking to go and visit an archive, this is a nice website because you can go and see on a map where they are. You can go by state, but you can also search at Archive Grid. So if we just do a simple search for Family Bible, now they have these little notes here. It says if you want to narrow your search results to only ones that have links, which means to digital records, you add this little phrase in quotation marks. I tried adding it. It looked to me like there was like a little bit of an extra space in there. I tried it both ways. For Family Bible, it didn't bring up any digital links. So that meant they didn't have digitized books that you could go click on the link and get over to that book and look at it like we did at Familysearch. But 20,000 results when you do Family Bible. And you could certainly add in a surname and narrow that down. We can put quotation marks around Family Bible, and that's going to get us, when we click search, down to 8,500. This is a nice collection. So even though you may not be able to read the digitized Bible online, starting online is going to give you a chance to find where are these housed. This one's over at the University of Virginia, and then you can make contact and do a little more research that way. And oftentimes the repositories are happy to do lookups, so that's nice. So Archive Grid, if you haven't used that, check it out because this is just one of many topics that you could search at Archive Grid when it comes to genealogy. But look how many Bibles they have. All right, so that's Archive Grid, and it's actually associated with the OCLC, so the website's a little different. Again, I'll have all these links for you in the show notes so that you can do these yourself. So examining the Family Bible, whether you find the physical one, whether you get the one that's online, or you get a chance to go see one in person, the examination of the Bible is going to, again, give you a lot of information. And I want to talk about some of the specific things that you should be looking for and that can help you understand more of the history of the Bible and the accuracy as well. So here's our list. Check the title page. So if there's a date that it was printed or published, look for that, because that might help you determine when it made its way into the family. Now, we have to keep in mind, even if a Bible is printed in 1850, it may not have been purchased or given to somebody until 1870. But we also know that it wasn't possible for somebody to die in 1820 and, well, of course, they couldn't record their own death, could they? No. But, things that happened prior to that publication date are going to be after the fact in terms of recording. So we keep that in mind in terms of whether it really is fully accurate, whether we need to get out there and find more information to try to verify that that's correct. So look at the publication date of the Bible and see how that parallels with the dates of the family members that are listed in it as well. And look through every page. I just can't emphasize this enough. And it's kind of time consuming. As you saw me doing the tour of the house, I was pulling these Bibles down and I'm like, a couple of things just fell out. A couple of things I found which kind of were thick enough that the pages kind of stood apart. But then even leafing page by page, I would find small little notes or an indication actually written in the Bible of something that mattered to them. And again, it's even beyond just the family tree information, but it could be notes, it could be scriptures, it could be something that was happening in their lives where that scripture was speaking to them right then that day. So it gives you a sense maybe of what was on their minds throughout their lifetime. So look through every single page and see what's tucked in there. And look through the page for markings. So you might find that those passages may have been particularly meaningful. I've seen Bibles where people literally just wrote notes that had nothing to do with their faith or being at church or anything else. It was just, I haven't seen a grocery list, but I've seen some interesting things that were really totally off topic from the Bible, but was certainly pressing on the mind, or that was important enough to write it in the margin. So look through there and see what you might find that way. And something else to look for as you're looking closely at the Bible was the published date after many of the dates that were entered in the Bible. And if that's the case, then there's a chance that the information may have been copied. And again, the significance of why we want to think about this is that copying introduces more mistakes. And so that's something to really keep in mind. And one thing I like to do is use a photo editor. Now, I've got one on my computer, and when I get a digitized page, some are better than others. Maybe you've downloaded a digital page from a website where you found a Bible. You can bring them into a photo editor and do a little bit of improvement. If you're a premium member and you've watched my photo case study class, you saw how I did that. It wasn't with a Bible, but it was with a green velvet scrapbook that my great-grandmother brought on the ship when she came from Germany in 1910. And it has all the photos in it. And I was really meticulous about digitizing every page. And when I brought them into the photo editors, I found that playing with the contrast, inverting the imagery, turning it into a negative, making it more saturated, all of those things brought out writing that it was almost unseeable. When just looking at it yourself, just looking at it with your own naked eye, you didn't even notice it, couldn't even see it. After it comes out in the improved image, then you look at it and you go, oh, okay, yeah. And then it really makes you look at every page again. If you don't happen to have a photo editor type program on your computer, MyHeritage has their enhancing tool at myheritage.com. And they can also colorize, and sometimes colorizing improves things as well. On your phone, If you have a smartphone, then you might want to try one of my favorite apps is the Adobe Fix. Now, we talked about Adobe Spark to make videos, right? In one of our previous episodes here at Elevenses with Lisa. These are all free apps. And if you go into your app store, and I don't know for you guys on Android, but I know for sure on the Apple, on the iPhone, that when you go in the app store, you can get Adobe Fix. And that has a lot of neat tools. And I just discovered yesterday, because I use Snagit by TechSmith, and I use Snagit. There's snagging clipping tools on your computer, but Snagit can do so much more. And it can clip video and all kinds of things. And I found an inversion tool there too, which I could turn the image negative. It can make a really big difference. So consider digitizing when the pages, particularly Bibles that you know have to do with your family, and run them through that photo editor and see what else might be there. So we've examined it closely. We've talked a little bit about how to interpret what you're seeing there, but let's dig into that a little bit more because there's so much we can learn and glean from our family Bibles. So again, was the information copied? And that should beg the question, if that's the case, who has the original? That would be interesting. And you've got the family information there, so hopefully you can start kind of making the rounds and reaching out to other cousins and seeing maybe who somebody has the original, particularly if you just got a transcription of it. And if you find one that's been digitized at one of these online websites, hopefully you'll have enough information from it. Don't stop there. Go back to google.com and start searching on some of the data that's coming out of the Bible that you got, whatever they put in the catalog information, and see. You might find somebody in a genealogy message forum or in their family tree somewhere making note that they have this Bible. So that could be your lead to find it. And of course, we talked about mistakes could have been made during copying or when they're entered by memory. Carolyn mentioned, on some of those pages from the Herring Bible, it just looked like somebody just went in one sitting and filled everything in. But we know that memory is fading and can sometimes be false. And so we want to go back and check and make sure, because it's very possible that that one single person, just like the one person who's talking to the census enumerator, doesn't get it right on every single person that they're talking about. And ask yourself, could the information have been recorded by many people over time? And of course, that handwriting is going to be a clue for that. And that takes us to the handwriting. Is it all the same? If so, that's probably copying, very likely. And oftentimes, when somebody got married and they're given a family Bible to start their family, one of the first tasks might be that they sit down and transcribe and copy in what came from Mama's Bible, right? So that could be all copied and again, introduce errors. And of course, different handwriting can indicate more firsthand knowledge. So when there's just that one line and that's in a unique pen and the next line, that's in a unique pen, that tends to make me lean towards that these are happening when these situations are happening and by the people who are there. Not always. We don't want to jump to any conclusions, but I think it's a little bit of a clue. And analyze all of the entries. So if you happen to get a Bible and you may be married into a family, so you're really interested in your spouse's direct line, but then there's these other ones, look at them all. Think of it like a photo album or a scrapbook. There is significance to the order in which things are entered into the Bible, and each entry individually has significance for so many different reasons. And ask yourself, is anybody missing? Is there any significance to the fact that they are left out? These are all things that the Bible can kind of help shed some light on. Was there an incentive for inaccuracies? That's possible too. So if somebody became pregnant out of wedlock and they then got married, there might be a little fudging of the dates, particularly in the Family Bible. So we absolutely every time want to cross-reference what we're finding with our genealogical documents and interviews that we're conducting. And did a wedding occur around the time that the Bible was published? As I mentioned before, that could make it a gift. And then we want to look at that and compare the dates that are in there, the handwritings, see what the bride may have gone in and rewritten, and then what she added to it. Or the groom could have done it as well. So lots of places. Are you surprised how many places that you can look for old family Bibles? I hope you're really encouraged that so often, particularly for the online Bibles, they might be much older, which is great because sometimes we're hurting for other genealogical documentation. If the civil records don't start till 1890, find a book from 1822. That's fantastic. So if by chance you're one of the fortunate ones, as Carolyn was, and get an old Bible yourself, somebody's passed down to you, it might be in need of restoration. So I want to go back to some of the information that Carolyn sent me because I think this is really helpful. In fact, it got me thinking about this old Bible, which literally, I don't know if you can see. I won't pull it off. This spine is literally coming off, and the whole thing kind of wiggles every time I pick it up, so I won't pick it up too much. But it would be really nice to be able to get it restored for somebody if you're going to return it as a gift. So she has in her Wallace family a very large Bible that came from her dad's family. And she says, the woman who restored this Bible did an awesome job. She had available the correct restoration materials. It's not perfect, like new, but it's still very good. And this could be really discouraging when you look at, you get a Bible like this. That's practically the condition of this one here. It's almost the same kind of Bible. And it's really possible to have these restored. And I think it's kind of nice that they don't go back to absolutely perfect new, because then it wouldn't be very authentic looking, would it? But certainly you don't want to lose the pages. You notice they'll start to crumble. And I don't think it's something you want to take on yourself, particularly in this kind of condition or this age. So Carolyn reached out to an expert, and she was saying that there weren't any in the area where she lives that she could find. But she did find somebody, and she also did something to the leather to renew it in some way. So you can see on the left, there's the original Bible. It's kind of, cattywampus like this one is here. And she says, when I first acquired the Bible, the brass latch would not close, but now it does. And the Bible can now be viewed and handled carefully, of course, without it falling apart. And she also constructed a really wonderful special storage box for it using archival quality materials. So look at, boy, that latch is gorgeous. And now it comes together. And honestly, if you do this kind of restoration or you're working on your photo albums, these archival boxes, it's a must-have, isn't it? Because we just know that over time, the damage just gets worse and worse, and you want to preserve it as best you can. So those acid-free boxes, and you can often find these on Amazon, also companies like Gaylord. Carolyn went on to say she couldn't find anybody in her local area, but she did reach out to a company in Indiana, and they are experts. So I'm going to share them here with you. I haven't personally used them, but Carolyn has, and I'll have their information also in the show notes. Leonard's Book Restoration, and it's leonardsbooks.com. And she said what was nice, and this is unique these days, isn't it? The website, very helpful, lots of photographs so you could see what you were going to get and how it was going to go. They were very pleasant to work with. She said she had to call them several times, and they were very responsive. And I noticed that on their website. They're all about, hey, 24/7, we're here, we're going to help you. She says, they put a new cover on my own personal Bible, and I was very pleased with their work. A few years ago, I also had them redo a small hardback Bible that my mother used. And I never got a chance to meet Goldina, Carolyn's mother, but I know that she was near and dear to my grandmother Pauline's heart, her younger sister. And they all went from Oklahoma out to California to work in the Richmond shipyards. I don't know that Goldina did, but I know that her husband was out there working. So in California, as many people from Oklahoma made that trip. And this is a wonderful, precious Bible. And Carolyn, I so appreciate that you've shared this with all of us here today because it's just so inspiring. So, it might seem like far-fetched that you might be able to find a Bible but I hope after going through this little hour together that you're feeling more hopeful and more inspired that it's possible. And in fact, it is possible. Back in 1890, November 6th of 1890, I did a little digging and I found this old article in 1890 newspaper. In fact, it was republished in many newspapers because it resonated and gave hope to so many people. And it was about a Bible that was lost for many years and eventually returned. In the summer of 1864, while the Union Army was lying in front of Petersburg, Virginia, D.C. Reinl, now a patent attorney in this city, was stationed at City Point. He found in a disabled ambulance an old family Bible, in which was a genealogical tree of the Hatcher family. For years, Mr. Reinl has been trying to locate the owners of the volume, and on September 13th last, he wrote to a friend in Virginia to assist him in his search. That letter was published in a Virginia paper, and this morning, Mr. Reinl received a reply from Thomas C. Hatcher of Chester Post Office, Chesterfield County, Virginia. Mr. Hatcher gives an accurate description of the Bible in question and says it was lost in May 1864 when General Butler attempted to march from the Bermuda Hundred to Richmond. It was taken from the halfway house between Richmond and Petersburg. This morning, the old Bible, with the history of the Hatcher family for several generations, was started homeward by express after having been in the possession of Mr. Reinl for 26 years. Mr. Reinl has also written a letter to Mr. Hatcher expressing his delight at being able to return to him his long-lost copy of the Scriptures. Wow. Never say never, my friends, because the Bible could come back to you through, my goodness, it survived the Civil War. And yes, all the documents, all the things I have in that video, I scrambled with using the newspaper article, and I found all those documents that are the real people that they were talking about. So I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope it gives you inspiration and encouragement that it's possible to do this, but start at home. That's the most important thing that you can do. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. Thanks, Karen, Kelly. Somebody asked a question. If they have a genealogy gem they would like to share. Oh, I'd love to hear it. Okay, so you can email me at genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. And I don't think I've ever mentioned it before, but we have a free weekly newsletter by email. If you're fairly new to us here, you might not know that. So go to genealogygems.com, and at the top of the page, you'll see a red button for newsletter, and sign up and get on the newsletter, because that's how we can stay in touch with you. And I want to tell you about all the stuff that's coming up in the weeks to come. I can't wait to read the stories. I can just see so many wonderful stories in your own families. And I love that about chat here in the live show, because we can all learn from each other. I'm going to be going through chat, and I'll grab any other questions that you guys might have and answer those in the show notes. When do the show notes come out? Okay, well, I've been getting later and later, but it's been busy. But the show notes will be out. I try to get them out within a day or so. They will be at genealogygems.com. And that's the reason you got to be on the newsletter, so that you get notification and you can click right through and get all the notes. If you're a premium member, and I hope you're a premium member, I love it because we got so much extra exclusive stuff for you guys. You can become a premium member at genealogygems.com, right next to the newsletter button. And everybody who's a premium member gets a downloadable PDF version of show notes. So everybody can look at the show notes on the website, but you'll get those to work with. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed the video. I have a very special message, and I have a very special friend who's here. Come here, special friend. Here's my special friend. Oh, well, this is my special friend too. Bill's here. Renly, say hi. This is Renly. Oh, he likes the microphone. Shasha is babysitting Renly. My middle daughter, Lacey, is in Southern California this week. Bye. Oh, look at the camera. And so we've had him for 2 weeks. But the reason I wanted to share, Renly and I have a very special message for Lacey. Happy birthday! Happy birthday, Lacey. We love you. You're an amazing daughter. Lucky to have you. All right, my friends. Hey, have a wonderful week. Get out there and see what you can find. I'll talk to you soon.